Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cloudy with a Chance of Therapy. My name is Justin,
I'm Kristen.
and we are here today to talk about mental health, life in general, largely the struggles of just being alive and how to deal with it. Um, how you doing today?
That's a loaded question.
Yes, I know.
Um, Aggravated, frustrated, irritated, um, annoyed.
Hmm.
Pick your adjective.
Yeah. Um, so everybody now, as you guys we talked about before, we're both looking for jobs. Kristen had a job pop up, but after going through the process, they decided they don't like that we use THC gummies. And
Which I am not like. I do not believe that weed is a gateway drug. I think anything can be a gateway to addiction if you let it. Alcohol, drugs, any type of drugs, as well as food. I personally typically self medicate with food. We just don't talk about food addiction because it's a necessity.
um,
So,
addiction is definitely something we're going to talk about. But basically, where we live, we take Delta 8 gummies. They're fully legal, buy them over the counter. Weed is recreationally legal. But this group decided didn't like that and didn't tell us beforehand, so it ended up being a whole thing in the office.
so, for context, the place that I had interviewed and had been offered a position at is drug free. That is completely fine. I have absolutely no problem with that. I don't take the gummies for recreation. I take them to help with sleep and mitigate anxiety that I have at night. Um, because I have a weird resistance to Benadryl, things typical over the counter sleep aids like or anxiety medications like Vistaril don't affect me. They don't make me sleepy because a lot of those, as we talked about in the anxiety episode, are Benadryl related, and that's part of how they make you sleepy. And had I been told when I got offered the job 2 weeks ago that I was going to that they test for THC and THC products, despite it being fully legal, like both recreational and medicinal in the state, um, they didn't tell me. I didn't find out until yesterday that I was going to have to pass a drug test. Again, I have no problem passing a drug test. The fact is that I wasn't told. I was not given information. I would have made sure that I could pass the drug test. And I know that that sounds really that's why they do drug tests. That's what no, that's why they do random drug tests. When you live in a state that recreational use of weed is legal and you are going to test for that, you need to let people know. For example, the state that we live in, THC byproducts are legal for recreation. In order to get actual weed, buds and things like that, you have to have a medicinal card. So if I had a medicinal card, it wouldn't even have occurred to me that that was something that I needed to stop using because at that point it would have become part of my medication regimen, for lack of a better word. So yeah. And so I either had the choice of taking the drug test and then in the you're staring at me.
Mm-hmm.
I could have had the choice of taking the drug test and having it fail in the LabCorp, which is who does their drug testing system, um, and then have the job taken away after waiting for another 7 to 10 days, because that's how long it takes for drug tests to get back, or refuse to take the test and walk away from the job then. So I chose to not take the test because I knew 98%, I would say 90% that I was going to pop positive for THC. Again, I want to reiterate, I have no problem not using the gummies. What I'm upset about is the fact that I was not informed in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. Yeah, no, you weren't. It was um, requirements for jobs should be posted with the job, including passing a drug test, and in places where weed is legal, that should include legal test for weed.
Yeah, because what they said was we are a drug-free um, facility. It didn't say what they tested for, which they don't have to disclose that. Um, but they need to disclose, because of it being legal in the state to use, that we test for THC.
Yeah. Um, so we were going to talk about ADD, but do you want to go into like rejection dysphoria and all that, justice?
So with there now, it is not everyone who has ADHD struggles with rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So what that means is when you have what you perceive as a rejection, and this could be something as simple as you send a text message or a Facebook message or what messaging app you have, and the person doesn't reply, the person doesn't get back to you immediately or anything like that. Oh my God, I've done something wrong. Even though there is no other evidence to support that feeling. So that's what we call rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Um, it can be something as simple as you say something to somebody and the person didn't hear you, and that causes essentially spirals. Now, the other thing that he mentioned was justice. So, a lot of times, people who are on the spectrum, either ADHD, because that is a spectrum, or have a spectrum disorder like autism or anything like that, they have a very strong sense of justice. They have a very strong sense of fair play. And that is something that I have. I struggle a lot with holding people up to my standards of behavior and expectations of behavior. So that's been a learning curve. And that also feeds into my frustration with what happened today, because I feel like I was not treated fairly. So that triggers this irritability, I guess.
You also said spiraling, like as if it can't leave your mind.
Yeah. So I refer to this as rumination. That term, if I remember correctly, and Mr. English major here is probably going to correct me. To ruminate means to fixate or to chew. You continue to chew on it. That word is derivatated. That's not a word. Is a derivative
There you go.
of the word where we get ruminids. So ruminids are cows, goats, um, camels, alpacas, anything that we refer to as chewing its cud. So they ruminate or continue to chew and chew and chew. And that's essentially when something gets stuck like that. That's what we do. We continue to chew on those thoughts or feelings until we have turned, use another metaphor, you've taken a piece of sand and turned it into a pearl. That's kind of the metaphor that we've always used, because I will let something get under my skin that I shouldn't. And then it turns into it goes from being a molehill, or not even a molehill, an anthill. Um, and then it becomes this mountain because I have fixated on it and ruminated on it and fixated on it and ruminated on it until essentially I've gotten myself angry at everything because I can't process essentially what's going on.
So,
So it's not exactly a spiral.
mm,
Um,
But it becomes intrusive. Like
Yes.
you chew on it for a while, swallow it down, then you get it out of your head, and then it just pops back up.
Yeah, it's like a song getting stuck in your head and you can't make it go away. Um, so for some people that can be we'll talk about eating disorders on another episode. We're gonna try and hit the main points of a lot of different things. So this is kind of mental health potpourri, which doesn't mean scented things. That actually means grab bag. Isn't that what it is?
Oh, I don't know offhand. I have to Google. Keep talking. I'll Google.
But anyway, so the idea is we're gonna hit a bunch of different topics, and that is something. So cycle back, lazy Susan conversation. Means like what I mean by that is food noise. Like for example, you get stuck in the thoughts of what am I gonna have to eat? What am I gonna eat next? I know I have XYZ downstairs, and then you can't get the thought of that food out of your head. That's food noise.
Potpourri has several definitions: a mixed bunch of dried flower petals,
Hmm.
or a random collection, a miscellaneous collection.
Okay, so
yeah,
grab bag.
Both, yeah. So but like so in this moment, like you're talking about, how do you deal with how do you stop the rumination?
That's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
Well, what helps?
So things that I do, I will talk it to death with Justin, which I know is not your favorite thing. But that helps me process. Um, you know, one of the key things with when something you would ruminate on something, when you get stuck on something, is figuring out how you need to process those thoughts, feelings, or emotions. Um, so a lot of it for me is just process. Um, Talking it over with you, talking it over with Sarah. Sarah's one of our longtime friends. We've been friends with her almost as long as we've been together, and I think that's only shy for me by like a couple of weeks.
I met her before we started dating.
Right. So you two have known each other slightly longer, but we're talking like by a month, if that.
20 years, 20 odd years.
Yeah. Our friendship could drive a car. Our friendship could drink.
Mm-hmm.
We've been friends since 2003, to give you guys some context there. But journaling helps. Journaling can be really beneficial, and that it doesn't have to be handwriting. I mean, every phone has a notes app. You can do that. You can easily do like memo notes, talking it through, those kinds of things.
When you journal this stuff, what should you be looking to, like, actual, like, what are you just gonna sit down there and all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy 1,000 times over? Or are you going? What do you do? Like, is there any kind of, do you try to answer questions? Try to give yourself an interview? Do you try to?
I mean, so for me, it is a lot of what the chuckle was about is I pulled my journal out. My journal stays in the office, but a lot of it is what the actual emotions are. If I'm feeling frustrated, if I'm feeling irritable, I feel lost a lot of the time. I kind of sit in that. Some days the world could be super overwhelming, and I understand that I need to do steps A, B, and C, but sometimes doing those things can be overwhelming, and I feel like I'm lost in that emotional tide, so to speak, or just situationally emotional, or situationally lost. we're gonna, like I've mentioned, my parents passed away a couple of different times, and that is where a lot of that stems from, not having a touchstone person who has the emotional experience and the life experience to be like, hey, I don't know what the fuck I need to do. It's like when we bought the house insurance. Um, I didn't know what to look for, what I needed, what I didn't need, those kinds of things, those types of situations where you would have that touchstone person to go to. Um, and it's, and I say that I don't want people to hear that I can't have those conversations with Justin. That's absolutely not the
There's a big difference between talking to your spouse and talking to someone else. Like spouses become well, one, if you know your spouse well enough, you know what the answers are going to be, and you guys basically end up having the same sort of level of knowledge. So if you don't know, there's a chance we don't know, and you need, but it's also useful to get outside help.
yeah.
You know, just get someone like a third party. A third party is usually quite helpful to have around.
Yeah. And just sometimes having the world experience of somebody who is older can be beneficial. Um, I didn't realize what I didn't know about being a grown up, being an adult, because let's be honest, I'm a kid with a drinking permit. That's what I like to say. I refuse to be an adult. Um, but having that person with that knowledge, like my dad worked in insurance, like he would have been able to be like, this is exactly what you want. Those kinds of things. Like, you know,
Mhm. So swinging back to anger, um, what do you do when it gets when you lose your temper?
if it's at someone, you apologize. Because so it's like when I found out about the drug test, I was not the most polite person. I didn't cuss the lady up or anything like that, but I was just like, this isn't fair. And I was clearly upset. Um, so in retrospect, I was probably more irritated with her than I needed to be. I wasn't what I would consider aggressive or anything, but it's apologize. Take ownership of your behavior. Understand, hey, I was upset that these behaviors were not okay, and do what you need to do to make amends.
So, well, that's the your feelings are valid, your actions aren't
And that's,
necessarily.
yeah, and that's something. Your feelings are always valid. You feel what you feel. It is what you do with those feelings and how you let those feelings affect you and everybody else around you that matters. Now the with the breadth of relationship experience, I know that Justin is a safe person, that he's not like, I would have to do some pretty heinous things for us to break up at this point. But
I'm not sure what that is. Even if you killed my brother, I'd be like, well, what'd he do?
oh, Nate, if you ever listen to this episode, remember that I love you, but also remember you're an asshole. It's the truth. He is one of the most loyal human beings I have ever had the grace to meet. However, that doesn't mean I don't contemplate making cornbread or corpses.
um, okay,
I'm pretty sure his wife contemplates that on a weekly basis.
that's part of being married. But so when you're angry,
Hmm.
how do you let it out safely?
It depends on what your level, like what you enjoy doing. So play a video game, kill pixels. That has been my go-to. Typically is fighting games, because then I feel like I'm actually getting to punch something.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I've been a Mortal Kombat girl since the Sega. But sometimes it can be, honestly, one of the things that helped the most today with coming home and the dogs being, you've been gone forever and we counted and we missed you. Um, Taking a nap.
In immediate sense, I always suggest scream into your coat or a pillow, or you got to let that immediate burst of energy out somehow. Um, and
I walked very fast, is what I did.
so yeah, do something physical. Don't punch anything, don't do anything that'll hurt anybody. And if you're gonna scream, try to get alone to do it, right?
Yeah, or scream into a pillow. Um, you know, so that's one of the things that PMR is really great for, which is progressive muscle relaxation. The con
Your pink chair.
Speaking of coughing.
Yeah, so you just got to be like, excuse me, I'm better now.
I like how neither dog twitched.
Yeah, they're fine.
Like, our humans are weird.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that's like that can be a great way to do it. I know Nate's go-to is hitting his hitting
Nate
his heavy bag.
Yeah, he has a heavy boxing bag in his shop.
Just sitting. Actually, I would bet woodworking is something that I know that he's talked about the meditative process of that and how that is very grounding and centering for him. I would be willing to bet that while he doesn't think about it this way, that's where that life frustration for him goes to.
But it's basically find
an outlet.
Find an outlet that is not harmful.
Sex is great.
Angry sex is good. But you want to make sure that you're not harming anybody, you're not interfering with anybody.
Yeah. Go for a drive. Go for a walk. You're not doing
anything self-destructive. Like, when I was younger, when I was a younger man, I would punch walls and all that kind of stuff like an idiot. Toxic, full-on toxic masculinity bullshit. But like, I left too many holes in walls. And you can't do that. You can't just go around because that causes problems, like capital P problems. Like, if you gotta punch something, find something you can't hurt, and then don't break your knuckles.
Yeah. I joke about the sex thing, but honestly, that can help release a lot of endorphins. It's the changing the mindset is what's key with angry. Because angry is what I consider a very hot emotion.
I think something physical is always the best. Doesn't have to be punching, but like if you like to cook, go cook something, especially if it's something that has to be cooked hot, fast, and quick, and like actively.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you know how to cook, like
make bread. If you know how to make bread, make bread.
Need bread dough for a while. You might end up with an over glutened loaf.
You may end up with an over gluten loaf, but I bet you'd be too tired to.
But like put together, chop something up carefully, like if you know what you're doing, or just the act of standing over and stirring stuff in a hot pan does wonders for draining energy out of people.
Mm-hmm. Especially when your AC doesn't work.
Yeah, especially when your AC doesn't work. If you have dogs, take them for a walk.
Go play in the yard with them.
Play in the yard with them. There's like very little stands up to a waggy tail and a happy puppy, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's like good things to do in the moment with it, because I view anger as like several levels of anger.
Mm-hmm.
There's like frustration, which is the daily. You're not actually angry. You're just annoyed and
now,
things going wrong.
Those things. Now those frustrations can stack up over time and create an angry outburst, because so every time we deal with a frustration, that takes away, like if we think about our emotional energy as a string and you're a stick that the string is attached to, and you can either roll the stick up and pull the string in, or you can let it out. So think about irritability as you pulling that string in, because your bandwidth, your ability to tolerate things, your tolerance level is shorter every time those things happen. And that's why a lot of times when someone has one of those angry outbursts, it's not typically because one little thing happens. It's a lot of little things that just build up without the ability to regain that bandwidth. If your parents have ever gotten frustrated with you, or you've ever gotten frustrated with a sibling and they make noise and you want to smother them with a pillow, or you end up losing your temper with somebody, that's typically what that is. Your ability to tolerate frustration narrows every time another thing happens.
If you ever sat in a room with somebody and got mad at them for breathing
Or snoring.
or snoring, so all right, so you get the frustration, which is the little stuff over time.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have actual anger, which is like flash in the pan.
So I consider anger two things. It can be that flash in the pan instant, but it can also be slow burn, consistent.
That's what I refer to that as rage. Rage is, to me, now I have a very like I'm an English major, so I have a much more like, I'm gonna turn this into fancy words. I don't know how much that actually counts for, but I go with frustration, anger, rage, wrath as my levels. Like, anger is what gets you like up out of the room, starts an argument, keeps an argument going, that kind of stuff. Rage is what happens when 3 days later you're still pissed off about it. Like, that's that low simmering background.
So, but I don't consider that rage. I feel like I feel like that can still be anger. That can also be resentment, which is often confused with anger, because resentment like builds those same emotional responses. When you resent someone, you are angry with them. That's the predominant feel emotion.
I mean, like, the anger doesn't go away. When the anger doesn't go away, it becomes wrath.
Right.
Rage.
Right. But that's why I'm classifying that. I feel like it can also be resentment. It can also be I think
resentment and anger, they dance.
Yes.
Like, they tango. Like, they go back and forth.
But I would
one
say
causes the other, and back and around and around.
Right, but I also feel like resentment is part of that slow burn. You may never get to you're on my, like, I wouldn't pee on you if you were on fire. That to me is wrath. Like when someone is to the point where
wrath is that slow. Wrath is what burns down cities. Wrath is what gets people murdered over over time. Wrath is biblical. Like, that's the kind of anger and hate and rage that does not go away no matter what you do.
I think the key thing there is wrath involves hate. You cannot be wrathful at someone that you don't hate.
I don't think that's true.
And I'm very careful with that word, because I feel like there are very few people on this face of the planet that I truly hate. And when I talk about hating someone, I'm talking about that, again, going back to that, you wouldn't pee on them if they were on fire. Like, you are not going to run them over with a car, but you don't feel anything for them. Like when they have reached that point, like, you don't, their well-being and continued existence doesn't register on.
Well, yeah, that's what. Well,
for me, it's they become an NPC.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's like, well, so for me, people start as NPCs. They have to become real people, and they can lose that status.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
I'm the opposite. Everybody's a person until they're not.
To me, wrath is because you can love someone and hate them. And
welcome to parental relationships. So we're going to talk about that at some point.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I was very lucky. I grew up with two very grounded, loving parents.
I had some emotionally abusive and physically abusive, alcoholic, drug addict, the whole deal. Like, that whole swatch, who I later reconciled with, and I still, on a level, hated them. Like, I hated Greg to the day he died, and I reconciled with him.
But I also think you and I have talked about too, and again, we're going to talk about this in the episode when we talk about parental relationships. But you also hated that you didn't get the same experience that other people got with Greg.
That was well.
But I
I
don't
wasn't
think
mad
that.
at Greg for that. I was
But you, I think you were.
well,
I think, and I think you
I
are.
definitely wasn't mad at his wife and kid.
No, I think you were mad at Greg. You were mad at how dare you give this to someone else when you couldn't give this to me.
Yeah.
Does that sound accurate?
And when he died, it was oh no.
We logged out.
Hold on, I gotta pause the recording. Okay, sorry about that. We had a minor technical difficulty. What were we just saying? I was talking about my dad. That's right. So like, because I was talking about how you can still be like you can have contain multitudes, multiple
Yeah.
at the same time, and like we're talking about the resentment.
I think that, and now again, I'm just basing this off of what I know about you and what I know about how you, like, what you voice to me. I think that there's resentment there, and I don't know how there couldn't be, because of feeling like your step sibling got what you should have had, an available, present, sober dad.
Yeah,
But I I don't think that ever transitioned into anger, resentment at them, because it wasn't their fault. I think that anger and resentment is still directed at Greg.
yeah. It's very hard to be angry at a dead person. Like, there's not a lot of good ways to.
I'm still mad at my dad for dying.
Yeah, I'm sure you're mad at your mom for a lot of stuff too.
Mom was sick.
Yeah, but
mom was no longer mom when she passed. My mom had dementia.
mm,
And so I miss who she was. I miss the person that she was. One of the things I always appreciated about her was how she could learn. Like, if you gave her evidence that I believe or thought was incorrect, she would change.
yeah, at one point in life, she kept like when Obama was running for president, she kept talking about how he's the Antichrist, and we had a fair few discussions about that.
No, the one I remember is when I hung up on her in the car, but I said I cannot talk with you when you're spouting nonsense like this, and hung up. And we
You gotta
were
understand, Kristen you'd never hung up with your parents before, had you?
a handful of times maybe.
So
Um,
it's a very rare like moment where some of us might be a little more cavalier about that sort of thing.
yeah, and then if you recall, if you remember, she immediately called me back and said, "Where are we meeting?" Because we were driving to Ashland to meet her. Um,
Yeah, no, but like you were mad at your mom for basically becoming someone else. You resented her.
yeah,
Or
it's also, I mean, but it's also really hard to hold on to, like,
it's hard to hold on to when you didn't have the full context.
right, because she had dementia. What I was angry that I was losing her, I think would be, I resented the fact that I was losing her so close after losing dad.
So
And
how do we deal with that? How do we deal with anger that the person we're angry at's gone? Like,
I'm still figuring that
yeah,
out.
that's a good one for when we get around to parents and grief and that kind of stuff.
Well, but there's going to be a couple episodes on that. Couple
Yeah.
episodes on grief too.
So
Like, what I was mad at dad for was he prioritized mom over himself.
to an extreme degree.
Yeah, so my dad was supposed to have a pacemaker put in. He'd actually been putting it off for a while and died with like a month before having that surgery. I was very mad at mom, and in retrospect, so grief is like putting when you have two people grieving the same person, and it was a very significant person in their life, i.e., mom and I grieving dad. We were like two hedgehogs in a box. I was coming to terms with the fact that I was losing my mom. I just lost my dad. I was in the final, what I thought was supposed to be the final semester of grad school. I ended up not graduating into December due to them extending because of not finishing my internship. But it was one of those things that was what I was angry about, was him not taking care of himself. I have a very clear memory of the day of his funeral. Um, but it was just stuff like that. Like, um,
The when Chris talks about two hedgehogs in a box, she's referring to the hedgehog's dilemma, or the porcupine dilemma, which is kind of a thought experiment where two hedgehogs might want to be close to each other, but the closer they get, the more they hurt each other, so they have to stay away because they're spiky. This is not how actual hedgehogs work. They have plenty of ways of interacting, but you can Google it.
yeah. It was one of those things that I struggled with a lot. I was very angry at her because I was just angry. And
She was an easy target because she was frustrating.
yeah,
It
I
wasn't
mean,
her fault. She was frustrating. She was frustrating because she was going through dementia.
and she was in a wheelchair and had a colostomy bag and couldn't do a lot of things for herself. Um, and dad did so much that there was a lot of shit that fell through the cracks through the whole. And we're like I said, we're going to talk about that in depth when we talk about grief.
Okay.
But it's one of those things to realize that anger is a lot more of a complex emotion than we like to think it is. We like to think that anger is just anger. It's just a simple feeling, and it's not. Anger is very complex. Anger often is anger, but it also can be frustration. It can be sadness. It can be anxiety. When we talked about anxiety, especially in adolescence, it can come across as anger because they do not have the bandwidth or the emotional experience to understand I'm afraid of something, and so I'm angry about it. Um, Anxiety can often represent, and I don't mean this to be stereotypical of men, anxiety can come across as anger with men a lot too, because men are conditioned that anger is an emotion they're allowed to have. They're not allowed to be vulnerable. And to process anxiety in a real way, you have to let yourself be vulnerable.
A lot of times men are raised default aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, anger is one of the acceptable emotions, and the acceptable response to that is aggression.
Yeah.
It's not, actually,
Hmm.
but that's how we're often raised.
Yeah. I also like, one of the best things that you can do, we talked about in the episode when we talked the very first episode when we talked about communication, having a conversation safe word. Um, Understanding that sometimes you need to disengage from a conversation or a situation, and that's okay. It is always better to walk away, disengage from a conversation, disengage from a situation, than lose your temper and then have to make amends later. Um, I'm kind of the impression of the mindset that sometimes it is better to act reserved with emotions, especially those hot emotions like anger. Because once you've said something, you can't take it back. You can apologize until you are blue in the face, but once you have said something, you can't take it back.
Yeah, the toothpaste doesn't go back in the roll
No.
in the tube.
Yeah.
You can't take away scar.
No,
Mm.
and words can, especially words said in anger or when you lash out, can be some of the cruelest things because we're not thinking, we are reacting at that point. And it is always better to err on the side of reserved when it comes to that than to
So
say something and regret it.
unfortunately, like, you're not really supposed to bottle emotions, but sometimes anger you have to swallow it for a minute, get somewhere safe, and then let it out
And
in a safe
I
way.
wouldn't necessarily consider that bottling it up. I would consider that not wringing out the sponge.
Hmm.
It's still going to drip. It's still there, but you were being like, all right, I need to walk away. Like there have been times when we've been at um Nate's house and I've had to get up and leave the
Um,
house ditch if anybody was curious what that noise was.
but it's
Um
one of those. The only way out is through.
yes. You can put sadness aside, you can put frustration aside, but when it comes to anger, like it really can only be set aside for so long until it becomes essentially a cancer. It becomes an emotional situational cancer that will destroy you and everyone you love. So I think with this episode, let's end instead of starting with the media conversation, like we typically have talked about TV shows or things that we've been doing.
Mhm.
And I feel like that would be kind of a good thing to do a palate cleanse after because this is a more
All right, what do you want to talk about?
um so we've been discussing Superman and some of the things that I don't necessarily like. It was a great movie. But some of the things that I struggle with, and one of the things we were talking about today was um, music and how music can help a scene, and it is the emotional trigger for a scene, or it can be, in my opinion, what did I do? Was it anachronistic?
Oh, what you really meant was distracting.
Yeah. It for me sometimes it'll break that suspension of disbelief. And one of the scenes that it's a great scene visually, it's fantastic. I understand why the music choice was made, but for me the music choice in the scene is distracting. So if you've seen the movie, it's the scene on the beach with Mr. Terrific and Lois Lane. I'm not going to give anything else other than that because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. It's a fantastic scene. The music is used in a very interesting way. And it fits because I described Mr. Terrific in that scene as being a cat playing with toys. Which I feel is an accurate description of that scene. He's playing, and I feel like the music reflects that. However, the music for me is distracting. It takes away from my connection with the scene because it's a song I know outside of the movie. Um, I think it's called
5 years time
5 Years Time.
by someone. Look
So
it up. Johnny and the Whale or something in the Whale.
it's a very like indie. It reminds me very much of like the Talking Heads and Cake. It's that kind of
Noah and the Whale. 5 years time.
yeah, it's that kind of vibe. But for me the song was distracting. It was off-putting for the scene.
Mhm.
So
No. So just the warning is, I have a film studies minor, so I have a very different set of opinions on things.
and we've been having to have conversations about, hey, you have access to more information and knowledge than I do. I'm a layperson in this situation. So you have to remind him that I don't understand some of the terms like diegetic.
Diegetic, non-diegetic, mise en scène, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
which is so. But my response to that is always, it's like, does it serve the scene?
mhm.
Does it? And if it's distracting, why?
Yeah.
And is it distracting on purpose? So like that scene, the song starts playing on radio, some stuff happens, and it becomes the main sound you hear. Everything else is muffled behind it, which means it's supposed to be
Mhm.
the main, like one of the main things you're doing. Your senses are being hit by that song.
Mhm.
And then at a different moment, goes back to being a song in the background.
Hmm. I
So
would
I
say at
think
the culmination of the scene.
it is. I think it's. So I interpret that as, and I'm not James Gunn. I don't know what he really meant. I interpret that as it's supposed to be a little distracting. It's supposed to be suddenly at the forefront of your mind, and there's a reason for it. Like why? So okay, if it's especially big budget movies like Superman,
Hmm.
every frame has been analyzed by every like 1,000 people.
Hmm.
So why is that the point? What's the point there? And I have a rule when it comes to creative work critique. I don't like it is always valid. It was bad, you got to back up. Like so, if you cannot like something just because I just didn't like it, whatever, and hated that movie, song, TV show, it just wasn't my thing.
Dexter, for example, not my thing. I love serial
Mhm.
killers, not my thing.
But like it was bad. It was bad. You have to back up. You got to tell me why it was bad. And we've talked about that on with Superman because Superman's my favorite comic book character, so of course I'm biased.
I don't think it was better personally than How to Train Your Dragon.
We will disagree on that,
Yeah.
but it was.
It was definitely better than Lilo and Stitch, leaps and bounds.
But my view on the Mister Terrific bit is that it was a because that also there's a big a oneer like a one shot.
Explain
Uh,
what that is.
so there's like I don't know 30 seconds where there's no cut,
Yeah.
something like that. 30, a long cut.
A great example of that, if you've seen Daredevil, the very first hallway fight scene is a great example of what a oneer looks like.
If you want, you can go on YouTube. There's a channel. They don't put videos out anymore, but it's called Every Frame of Painting. They have a great bit um, oneers and how they're used, especially in Goodfellas has a very famous oneer.
Mhm.
But because of the language of cinema, we are accustomed to edits. We expect edits to happen. We expect cuts to happen.
Mhm.
So when they don't, that calls attention to it.
Mhm.
So the whole idea is that now we have a song calling our attention. We have the one shot calling our attention to this being an almost. It comes across as almost dreamlike. Like so, Lois and
I would
what
say
Lois is experiencing is definitely way outside her reality.
I would say more like a hallucination.
Yeah.
I would liken it more if you've seen the second Suicide Squad movie, the scene with the birds, or there's a couple of other scenes where Harley Quinn
When Harley Quinn is doing her solo thing in the red dress,
yeah.
again, we're not gonna try to spoil. That has a couple of very long takes. Not quite a oneer, but there's a couple of very long takes.
But it also has that same dreamlike quality, and that is another James Gunn film, which is why I used that one in particular.
But so like, I think the whole point is to establish this. Lois is almost stepping into is now beyond her normal world.
It could be used as a metaphor for her being no longer normal. She is now aware of the reality that is superheroes.
Well, and because the very next thing they do is jump into a portal, right? So like that is Lois literally going through a thing to be able to cross the gateway into another world.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the point, is to kind of establish that for both Lois and the audience that we're stepping things up a bit. We're things are about to change in one way or another, because after that is when that's like also like kind of a like it after that things just kick up in terms of action as well. Like the action just starts from that point and doesn't stop for a while. So that's your last moment of living in the normal world of the comics to the action of the third act. Um, that I think is done great. I think if it was done with a different song, it might have hit you different.
Yeah, so like that for me, and we were talking about it. It's almost like a jukebox song, and that can be done really well. Arcane does that phenomenally well.
Arcane uses like Arcane uses a what I called it a uh, bespoke jukebox. Yes, it's a bunch of songs that are pop songs by individual bands, individual songs, not
Like
cinematic
Sting.
cinematic soundtrack music, right?
Hmm.
Cinematic soundtrack music is specifically done by like usually an orchestra to fit the scene. These are done by bands, and I get the feeling that they were animated partially after the songs were made. Like they probably got written on storyboards and then animated after, is what it feels like.
Hmm.
But these are done by bands for this instance.
Hmm.
And the bands often have different versions of them on their own albums.
Hmm.
So it's a but that is a bespoke jukebox. That's much more like its own soundtrack. Like it's like having a guy compose for you. It's just
Right. But I think
20 dudes compose for you.
right, but I think that's the problem. I think for me in that scene, the music creates a dissonance because I can associate it to the real world. So it breaks that I'm watching a movie and that suspension of disbelief that you need to really get into a movie to have it be that full experience. Because for me, the difference with Arcane is the music always felt like it was a part of the scene. It didn't take it added to, did not take away. For me in the Mr. Terrific scene, while the music, I will agree the music fit the scene, it broke that suspension for me.
Mm-hmm. Which is a like that comes up. That's where that comes down to personal taste.
I don't believe personal taste can is what breaks you out of your suspension of disbelief.
Well, there's also like it's like if you're watching a movie with
It's like
swords.
biting into a sandwich and there being sauerkraut.
No, it's more like if you're watching if you're a person who knows swords, you're watching a sword movie like Lord of the Rings, whatever, or and like
Lord of
someone
the Rings made a point of doing that good. So let's talk about Highlander.
I did mostly Highlander, any of those like Conan the Barbarian, any of those. It's like that. You if you get someone who knows swords, then they see something happen like that. No, that's not happening. Suddenly they're out of the movie.
Yeah.
You have a very emotional connection to music.
I do. I do.
And you said you knew this song from before.
Yeah.
Where so that might be the same kind of instance, and I chalk that up to that's an individual thing you can't really account for.
Yeah.
Because I think the song that was very well done.
Like I said, I don't think that the song I feel like the song fit the scene. Sorry, I keep pausing. Chloe had hurt her toe, and so she's got gauze on it and is in a booty, and
she hates it.
She hates it. If you've seen the videos of dogs walking with boots on for the first time, that's exactly what it is.
She's lifting up one leg way high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so that's like like I said, so there are moments. That's why I'm saying that disconnect between I don't like it and it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like it. Fair.
Right, but I also objectively have said it's one of my favorite. Despite that, it is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Next to Crypto at the end. Again, not saying anything. Crypto makes that movie, in my opinion, because anybody who has fostered or adopted a rescue dog recognizes those behaviors. Like that I am ornery and sweet and kind, but you know what? It just those are for me. It was a fantastic scene. But just there's a disconnect with the music, I think, for me.
Yeah.
I still recommend going and seeing it. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
It is made it was number one for a reason.
Well, and it feels like comic books. So that's like the movie does a very good job of establishing this feeling that we are in a fantasy world, not a world that's like ours that just happens to have, a superhero in it. No, this is full on fantasy. It's just that the fantasy world just happens to look a lot like ours.
One of my other I don't
costuming backs that up because everybody looks like they're sort of dressed from like the 90s.
I struggle with. I feel like the film doesn't know what time period it's in, so I struggle with that. That is another disconnect for me.
buildings are kind of bigger than you would ever have. Like the Daily Planet main bullpen floor looks like it's from the 90s cartoon Adventures of Superman. It looks a lot like that cartoon. It's this gigantic room with like a 30-foot ceiling and huge lights. Everybody has these gigantic desks and all this kind of stuff.
The thing that was distracting for me is the fucking marble floors.
Yeah,
And
it's the same thing. No bullpen actually no newspaper has floors like that. No bullpen looks like that. They look much more like the Richard Donner movie Superman, where it's a bunch of cubicles and people running around and papers stacked up everywhere.
It looks like what you think of anytime you think of a telemarketing place. Exactly what it
Yeah.
looks like.
But like the movie, in a lot of times you don't notice that when you're watching it because the movie does a very good job of putting you into the world, and this one does that very, very well. But it's one of those things, if you notice it and it hits your brain wrong, you'll never not notice it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we have 2 different podcasts recorded. We needed to wrap it up because this podcast became 2 entirely different subjects. We need to wrap it up. So final thoughts on anger.
That it can, for me, anger is one of the more insidious emotions that we deal with, because left to fester, it turns into resentment, it turns into hatred, it turns into feelings that most of us don't like to sit with and don't like to feel. And I think that you just it is one of those emotions that you have to deal with. You can't, I'm going to put it in a box. I'm going to put it in a box. You can do that with grief. I don't recommend it. You can do that with anxiety. You can do that with trauma. There's a lot of emotions that you can, I'm going to put in the box, and they take much longer to turn into the monster under the bed. Whereas anger
metastasizes quickly.
Yes, it does. Anger for me is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die from it.
That's a quote from somebody.
Yeah, I don't know who it is.
I forget who it is.
Not mine. Can't lay credit to that. But it's accurate. You sitting with anger, allowing yourself to stay angry. Nate's view on Greg's a great example.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he is not entitled and justified to those feelings. However, at some point, not processing it and starting to let it go affects you. It doesn't affect them.
It's a anger. Like I said, you have to deal with. You have to find a way to deal with it and figure it out. Both the hot in the moment anger and if you end up with that long term, rage and wrath, that you definitely need help, like dealing with that on your own, because by that point it's become a thing. So you definitely need help to deal with that. So once again, if you have the opportunity, get professional help.
Yeah.
Okay. Final thoughts?
As always, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. It's important to process any emotion. Don't let it become a monster under the bed, so to speak.
And yeah, basically it's and this is very rich coming from me because it feels very hypocritical, because I am a very angry person deep down inside. I just don't want it out much.
And how's that served you?
Not well. No, not well. So it's one of the things you have to find a way to let it out. Like there can't, because eventually you learn to live with it. Mm-hmm. And boy, is that dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Because the wall will not hold. Something will eventually kick
the boy in the dike.
Yeah. Like, he's not even the boy in the dike. It's trying to hold back a wall with a paper sheet. Something's going to poke a hole in it eventually. Mm-hmm. And you can't hold on to it forever. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to hurt somebody.
Or yourself.
Yeah. Not necessarily physically, emotionally, probably. You'll say something. You'll snarl at the wrong moment. Someone will do something small, it'll hit the button just right, and stuff's going to come out. And so yeah, anger's dangerous because it elicits external action against other people. That's the whole point of anger. It's like an evolutionary emotion,
Mhm.
is to give you the energy, to drive, and desire to hurt something, just to hurt something, maybe to protect yourself and others, stop it from happening again. But since we don't live in a world where you can just bash someone's head over with a club, you kind of need to find a better way to deal with it. And the first part is acknowledging that you're angry, even though you've learned to live with it, and then finding some way to let it out safe and
I think
deal with it.
the key for any emotion, we're just gonna sit here for a second. I think
We're ending it. We're finishing up.
yeah. Welcome to my characters. I think one of the key things to remember with anger is, or with any emotion, is acknowledgement. You have to acknowledge the emotion exists, or you can't process it.
Yeah. All right. As always, if you have any questions, cloudywithachanceTherapy@gmail.com. Let us know, and we will be glad to talk about it when we get a chance.
Yep. If you have any suggestions for TV shows or movies that deal with mental health, either you feel like they handled it well or you felt like they handled it poorly,
or if you just want to hear us talk about it,
yeah. So feel free to add those. We also have a Facebook page, Cloudy with Chance Therapy, so you can snag us there. We are now on Apple, so it's an extra place you can see us. If you are of the iPhone ecosystem, it is on Apple. We are on Spotify, and we are on Amazon. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night. We love you. Sorry this one went way long, but we'll talk to you next week. Bye.